Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see What If Naruto x Glynda x Neo x Amber. Part 1. Huge shout out to NeonZangetsu for this story. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Tyrion Kalos ran. He ran and ran and ran, as his lungs burned and his chest ached, flinging himself through the swamp with no heed. Uncaring of the noise he made, seeking only escape. Cold moonlight spilled down upon his bloody back, breath fogging before him as he flung himself forward at a breakneck pace. Run. 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 Had to run. Had to flee. Had to survive. His vision tunneled, focus narrowing down to a singular point, gasping for air. There was nothing else. He stepped into a sinkhole and a boot was sucked down by the bog. He yanked his leg free, tripped, stumbled, and caught himself on his hands and knees. The pause cost him. Tyrion. A haunting whisper echoed in his ear, heralded by a low whistle, deep and haunting, leaving the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. Like a thought he'd half forgotten but remembered too late. A nameless lullaby from his darkest childhood memory, promising to tuck him down into bed forevermore. He didn't know. He no longer knew. Or perhaps that was the blood loss talking. Might be the madness. So very hard to tell at the moment, with his heart trying to burst clean out his chest. He whimpered, scrambled up to his feet, and kept running. It should have been simple. Kill the silver-eyed bitch, slay Summer Rose. She'd been alone, here in Mistral. Weakened. Wounded. Surrounded by Grimm. Ripe for the picking. Lionheart had told him exactly where she would be. Vulnerable. Ripe for the killing. Until she hadn't been. Until that thing walked out the mist without a sound. Until it brandished its twin sickles and started cutting. Now it was chasing him. The hunter had become the hunted, the turns had tabled. Was that the saying? Tyrion thought it was. He was the one wounded and bleeding, missing both an eye and ear. The Rose would live to see another sunrise. He might not. If he failed to reach his bullhead, his mistress would be so cross with him for his failure here tonight. How she would beat him, how she would whip him senseless if he survived. No! He had to survive. Just keep running. He was good at that, running. Always had been. There. He could see his ship up ahead, past the bog. Freedom awaited. A cackle burst out of him. He was going to make it. Smoke billowed around him and ahead of, cutting off the path ahead. Too late, Tyrion glimpsed the hooded figure of a man lurking within, broad of shoulder, whiskered cheeks dimpled in a self-same smile. His lips pursed in a whistle. Paused, now, to consider him. Leaving so soon? The party's just getting started. Who are you? Rather than respond, his assailant smiled, stepped backwards into the mist, and vanished before his very eyes. The sound of his footsteps faded soon thereafter. Soon enough the whistling went with it. All that remained in his wake was the silence. Terrible, dreadful silence. A moment passed. Another now. Another. Still no sign of him. Where was he? Where had he gone? Twisting left to right in the haze only left him all the more disoriented. Tyrion raged at it. Show yourself. Panic set in. He laid about himself with his knives and tail, to no avail. Only mist met him. Where are you? He howled. Where? A tan finger tapped his shoulder. He whirled, knives flashing. Slow. A sharp rebuke, then a hooked sickle swept out of the mist to rake across his solar plexus, tearing a bloody line across his bare stomach. He cried out and slashed back, only to meet more mist. Steel cut through smiling shadows and failed to find the flesh he sought. Sloppy. He keened as a bloody sickle whistled out of the fog, cutting deep into his cheek. His tail stabbed out after it. Sad. An effortless parry sent him reeling. It was too much. Tyrion flew into a frenzy, hissing and kicking and spitting. This time his knives met steel. Red eyes gleamed at him in the mist, stark and slitted like some great beast. He glimpsed pearly white teeth in the gloom, bared in a savage smile, while his own petrified golden orbs stared back at him within the hooked crescents. My turn now. His fearsome foe flicked a fist, and those twin sickles curled inward, becoming paired punching instruments, ones that smashed into his chest and battered him backward in a storm of blows. It didn't stop there. A kick caught him in the ribs as another twist planted the hilts of the sickles together. Gears whirred and clicked as their hilts elongated before his very eyes, creating a wickedly hooked staff that he twirled once between his hands, sweeping in before he could react. It cut up, snared his tail just below the stinger, and sheared it clean off. Tyrion fell to a knee and curled inward on himself, clutching his wound. No more! Please! His foe ignored the plea for mercy. An open palm rocked out of the smoke and closed around his throat, choking him. He grasped at it furiously, to no avail. Their grip was ironclad. It lifted him clean off his feet. An amused face bearing whiskered cheeks emerged from the haze. His pursuer lifted their head and removed the cowl, revealing steely blue eyes and tawny blonde hair streaked silver in places. The rest of his body followed soon thereafter, hoisting him high. A flick of the wrist sent him crashing down to the ground. Cold fingers tightened around his throat. Still smiling, he squeezed his face, idly thumbing a terrified tear from his cheek. Cold lips brushed his ears. You're not living up to the legend, Scorpion. A lazy toss flung him away. The mist closed in again. Coward! Stop hiding! I'm not hiding. I've been watching you for the last year now, Tyrion. A boot caught his ribs, sending black spots bursting before his eyes. Steel clashed against his hands, ripping through his weapons, shattering them and taking his left hand besides. I'm right here. Another kick wrenched a gasp from him and sent him skidding across the ground like a flung stone. I've always been right here. Get up. He had to get up. Salem could grow him another hand. Another tail. He just had to get up and react. I was there to witness all your deeds. A boot stomped down on the back of his head, grinding his bloody visage into the dirt. Every crime. Every atrocity. I walked in your wake, repairing the damage you did. I wanted to see if you would stop. If you had some semblance of humanity left in that black, festering pit you call a heart. Another stomp forced his face into a swampy puddle. You didn't. Frantic bubbles welled up as he thrashed and struggled, the words muffled beneath the water. And then you went after my daughter-in-law. He heard a faint sking sound as his world turned gray. You lured a wounded woman into a trap and tried to kill her. But you didn't even notice me. Because madmen laugh in the face of death, right? A hand caught him by his ruined tail and hauled him out of it, freeing him from a watery grave. But you're not laughing now. Tyrion clawed his way onto his back and crawled away like a drunken crab, wasted and gasping for air. You're no huntsman. You are. Plenty of things. The hooded man shouldered those wicked sickle scythes and pivoted, considering him as one might a stain beneath their boot. I've been called many names by a great many people. Grandfather, father, uncle, brother, Naruto, to name a few. To you? A sickle hooked up under his chin, just shy of his jugular. I'm death. He crouched before him, digging the blade deeper. A bead of blood welled up beneath bitter steel. Straight up. And I've come for you, Tyrion. You, yours, and all your friends. It seems talk wasn't enough of a lesson all those years ago. He tooted softly, like a disapproving grandfather. Now I'll have to make an example of you. Death? Incredulity gave way to fevered, frenzied hope, and he dared a laugh. Ha! My mistress does not fear death. She cannot die. You know, a low, throaty chuckle rumbled over his whimper of pain. I find the idea of immortality absurd. An eternity to live a life without end, to learn and grow as a person, to do some real good in the world, and your mistress didn't value any of it. Worse, the whiskered warrior gnashed his teeth. She wasted it. All that knowledge. All that power. And what did she do? A sad shake of the head followed, setting his blonde bangs swaying to and fro. She didn't even try to learn. Not once. So I thought to myself, if she's stepping up her game again to go after my descendants, why don't I do us both a favor and start going after her pawns? After all, all's fair in love and war. Tyrion pushed against the knife. That's cheating. You fiend. Shoo! A finger pressed against his lips as he cooed softly. Don't tell. The sickles crossed against his neck, hooking into his throat. Flicked out. And the world shifted. Oh dear. Why was he looking up at him himself? That didn't make any sense, unless, So that's how it was. Tyrion's head tumbled from his bloody shoulders. The last thing he heard was that whistle. Darkness slithered in. Summer creaked an eye open. That shouldn't have been possible. She didn't have eyes to see. Not anymore. Didn't she? She'd lost them. She remembered losing them. She could recall that much. Everything else was so blurry, all the world a gray haze that wouldn't go away no matter how hard she blinked. She dimly recalled Tyrion Kalos. That raving lunatic fighting her amongst the horde grim, working with the creatures to beat her down. His whirling and cackling and slashing until finally, he got the better of her. A blinding flare of pain as his knives slashed across her face. Screaming. Falling to her knees. Clawing at her useless eyes. And then came the whistle. Tyrion had been the one to scream after that. Summer wondered if he was dead. She hoped so, hoped it hurt. Summer Rose had heard that whistle countless times in her life. To most it was a deadly dirge that promised doom. To her it was a reassuring lullaby, a gentle reminder that Taeyang's old man, her father-in-law, was near, watching over her and her children. Yang and Ruby loved that whistle. Easy now. A familiar voice drawled, drawing her back from the black. I just regret your eyes. Your vision's going to be a bit dim for the next few hours until you adjust. She was vaguely aware of being held. Carried. Not slung over someone's shoulder like a sack of potatoes, but gingerly, like the princess out of a storybook. It was humiliating. Taeyang would never let her live it down if he saw her like this. Still, she'd take humiliation over death any day. A scroll clicked. She whined. Naruto, no! Naruto, yes. Low laughter filled her ears, pitched to Carrie. Stay alive and I'll delete this picture when we get back to Patch. Summer absolutely growled at him. Because you see, she knew that voice. You really came for me? Course I did. He drawled. Couldn't let my favorite daughter-in-law die now, could I? Summer huffed and snuggled down into his arms. Taeyang's dad had always struck her as a little off. Her beloved blonde brawler had once claimed a distant relation to Nicholas Schnee before. She had laughed at the time, thinking it was some sort of joke, only it wasn't, because Nicholas wasn't really Nicholas at all. His real name was Naruto, and he was something far more terrifying than the founder of the SDC. But right now, she couldn't ask for a better father-in-law. Did you get my axe? Sure did. He drawled softly. I wouldn't leave your baby behind. He'd best not. She'd built that axe rifle herself. There wasn't another one like it in all of Remnant. And peaking of weapons. Tyrion's dead, isn't he? Her father-in-law didn't answer her question. He simply kept walking, kept carrying her. That, too, was answer enough. Come on, let's get you home. Yang and Ruby are waiting. You promised them you'd come back, didn't you? Right. She had to stay awake. Mustn't sleep yet. I did. Then keep your promise. She couldn't see his face properly, but she could hear his boots crunching against gravel, feel a gentle hand against her forehead as he carried her, flicking away beads of cold sweat. Gonna need you to stay awake until the fever breaks, alright? Was that why everything hurt? K. He rumbled a laugh. Good girl. She heard something. Blinded though she was at the moment, Summer's senses were sharp as ever. She heard a rustling noise ahead of them. Naruto exhaled softly and loudly, the long-suffering sigh of a man who had no more patience left to give today. Soon thereafter another set of footsteps reached their ears. The newcomer stopped just ahead of them. Naruto stopped suddenly. Well, if isn't Hazel Reinhardt himself. No doubt he said the words for her benefit. Hazel was here? She tensed. The man who can't feel pain. We had an agreement. A voice like a slow-moving avalanche rumbled. Yup. Definitely him. And she couldn't be more useless right now. Of all the rotten timing. Yes, we did. She couldn't see Naruto, not completely, but she could hear the smile in his voice. You lot leave the silver-eyed warriors alone and I let Salem and Ozma play their little shadow game, killing each other over and over until the heat death of the universe, and who am I holding right here? Silence reigned supreme. Hazel, you're not mute. I taught you and your sister better than that. You're holding a silver-eyed warrior, father. Summer choked. F.A. Why, so I am. Meep. Taeyong's dad and apparently Hazel's sounded proper pissed right about now. What a coincidence. Was Tak and her little gang not enough of an example? She heard the growl creeping into his voice, like some eldritch beast awoken after a long slumber. I'm sure Salem's told you the story by now. How I gouged out their eyeballs and served them to her with a side of salad. I really thought the lesson was welly arnadental you went after my daughter-in-law. He didn't sound happy now, no sir. Your sister, by marriage. Hazel sounded positively sullen. We didn't know. Neither did I. No. You didn't. Blearily, she glimpsed Naruto shaking his head, blonde bangs swaying beneath his hood. He shifted his grip on her, reaching down toward his belt. But you still tried to kill her anyway behind my back, still thought you could get away with it while I was occupied. Which makes our agreement null and void. Here. She heard him toss something Hazel's way, heard the giant catch it with a grunt. Do me a favor and bring that box back to your mistress. I've left a message inside for her. Do that for me, and I'll let you live today. For what it's worth, I am sorry. Sorry? Naruto clicked his tongue. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught, like that time I found you with your hand in the cookie jar. You've fallen far. Gretchen would be so disappointed in you. She heard Hazel grind his teeth. Do not say her name. You have no right. I have every right, boy. Naruto's voice had lost all semblance of kindness now. All that remained was cold steel. I'll say your sister's name whenever I please. Gretchen met her end with courage in her final moments, because she knew the proper value of her life. Unlike you? And what would you know of life? You weren't there when she died. You didn't save her. I've learned to be more proactive since then. If I could bring her back, I would. Liar! Hazel roared the word and stomped forward. Summer felt Naruto shift his grip on her yet again, freeing up his other hand. That was her only warning. She had just enough time to brace herself and cling to his shoulder for dear life. Momentum yanked hard at her a moment later, then she heard a grunt, followed by the harsh crack of someone Hazel, hitting the ground in the night. There it is. An angry, hungry rasp rose to fill the void. I do love the smell of fear. Summer didn't dare speak. Didn't dare draw attention to herself. Not now. Not after those words. Not so sure of yourself now, are you? I know more of life and death than you could possibly imagine. She heard his boot stomp down, grinding against something. She didn't want to imagine what. Gretchen sold hers dearly, fighting for others until the bitter end, and her memory is the only reason you still draw breath. Footsteps crunched against the gravel, and belatedly Summer realized they were moving, that Naruto's blurry shape was actually walking with her, leaving Hazel behind. She wouldn't want me to kill you. Don't make me. You think this is over? Hazel braided this back out to him. You've changed nothing. This won't stop me. I cannot feel pain. Can't feel pain, he says. Naruto offered a derisive snort. Everyone dies, Hazel. Just as everyone feels pain. There's all kinds. Mental, spiritual, physical. You don't even know what true pain is. You're just an arrogant boy who thinks he's immortal. I'll leave you with one last bit of advice. Everyone thinks they'll be the one to defeat me. But no one's escaped me yet. Tak didn't. Tyrion didn't. What's won't. If you get in my way, you'll be next. You, and whatever poor pawn Salem sends my way. Tell her, Hazel. Tell her I'm awake. Tell her the game has changed. He walked away with a whistle. Summer shivered and tucked herself into his chest. She never felt more powerless in her life. She never wanted to feel this way again. You'll be all right. Naruto stopped whistling for a moment to pat her searing forehead. His hand was cool against her feverish skin. Just need to pick someone up in Argus, then we'll be on our way to Patch. Won't even take half an hour. A whistle pervaded the clearing. It was a merry little thing, one Ruby Rose knew all too well, a gentle melody that had lulled her to sleep more times than she could count, one that had the 5-year-old looking up from her toys in the yard with a giddy grin. Silver eyes strayed toward the trees. Every time she heard that whistle she got excited because it meant he was nearby. She glimpsed red eyes in the gloom but felt no fear, because no Grim ever came near their house. This was the safest place on Patch, after all. Sure enough, he stepped out of the brush. She leaped to her feet. Grandpa? Froze now. Because there, leaning against his shoulder. Ruby perked up. Mommy! Oh, wait, Grandpa was carrying her. But who was that helping him? A tall lady wearing some kind of skull mask? No, never mind that. Mommy was hurt. Her pretty white cloak was covered in red stains, stains that looked an awful lot like blah blah. Panic dawned. Silver eyes widened. She threw her head back and wailed at the top of her lungs. Daddy! Taeyong came barreling out of the house like an angry bear. Yan was only a step behind. Ruby? What's wrong, sweetie? She thrust a finger towards Summer. Daddy saw Grandpa a second later. He said a few naughty words. Yang covered her ears so she didn't hear the rest. But she did see Daddy run toward Grandpa to help carry Mommy and bring her into the house. Grandpa tousled Yang's hair as they slipped past, which made her big sister squirm, which gave her a chance to wriggle free, scamper after them and hear a few words. Not her blood. Most of it's Tyrion's. That's good to hear. Where are you going? To have a word with Ozma. Grandpa laid Mommy on the couch. Daddy frowned at Grandpa for some reason. I think you meant Oppen. I know what I said. Summery is going to stay here for a bit. She'll help train the girls. Daddy looked nervous. That might be for the best. If they came for Summer, then they'll come for Ruby. Ruby tried to follow him. The masked woman came round the corner and snatched her up by the scruff of the neck. Easy there, Squirt. They're busy. Maria. Grandpa tooted. Drop the girl. I told you to train her, not break her. The slender silver-eyes woman sighed. Yes, Gramps, sorry, Gramps. Ruby blinked. She blinked real hard. 3 times, in fact. Gramps? There could be only one conclusion. New auntie. Yay. Someone had been here. Ozma knew it the moment the elevator doors opened. There was a silence in his tower, or rather, a lack thereof. An unnatural stillness bordering on the supernatural. As if someone or something had sucked the life right out of the air, leaving it dry and arid. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise when he inhaled. He could still breathe, which suggested there was oxygen to be had. And yet no one emerged to challenge him. "Hello?" He ventured into the silence. "Is anyone there?" No one answered him. Of course they didn't. There was nowhere to hide in his office save behind his desk, and had anyone been foolish enough to do so, he would have seen them from here. Nor did he sense spells or traps of any kind. The gears of his tower continued to tick ever onward as they always did. Was he growing paranoid in his old age? Perhaps. Shaking his head, he sat behind his desk and went to work. There were reports to grade, reconnaissance to read, plans to make. The war against Salem ground ever onward. She had been strangely silent after that failed attack on Summer. He still didn't know who saved her. Crow might need to risk another scouting incursion into the Grimlands. Tooting softly to himself, he shuffled his papers and raised his mug to his lips. Odd. The hot chocolate in his cup was cold. Had it lost its heat so quickly? A low whistle sang through the air. Ozma felt his shoulders slump even as he sagged in his seat. Ah. It was that time again, was it? How quickly the years flew by. He'd heard that infernal whistle so many times now, and yet somehow it never failed to terrify him. It always arrived when he least expected it, bringing mindless dread in its wake. When he looked up, he was standing there. He'd not come through the elevator, or the window, or even the floor. He was simply waiting for him, sickles in hand. He didn't need to look into the shadows of that dark cowl to know who was looking back. Those wretchedly bright eyes told a story all their own. Well, well. He pushed himself upright in his chair and snatched up his cane. If it isn't Death himself. Brandishing his weapon, he snapped off a salute. Come to collect me again, have you? I'm afraid I won't go quietly. But you already know that, don't you? The hooded figure lunged with inhuman speed and he glimpsed blonde hair beneath the cowl. Ozma barely parried a sickle with his cane. The blow rattled his arm right down to the bones. He retaliated with a riposte only for another to whistle and at his eye. He swayed aside for all the good it did him. It swept in without fail, punching right through his aura like it wasn't even there to rake across his cheek, drawing a bloody red furrow just below his right eye. He staggered back and touched a hand to his face. The wound was slow to heal, even with his aura full. It was him after all, then. He knew a few semblances that allowed one to cut through aura, but no one else could inflict such an injury. No time to savor his realization. His attacker caught his cane and smacked him with a sickle, bloodying his face yet again. A fist followed through to bloody his lip. Stars flashed across his vision, and he bit his tongue, the pain of which loosened his grip and sent his weapon tumbling through the air. It landed in the blonde's open palm. You really gotta stop losing this. He turned it over in his hand, regarding it curiously. A new one? How much energy do you have stored up this time? Ozma thumbed a thin line of blood from the corner of his mouth. Enough to eradicate an obscenely large grim man to make you bleed. Confident. The ghost of a smile touched his would-be killer's lips and he whistled, an actual whistle this time, and not that terrifying lullaby he'd heard more times than he could count. I thought you would have learned by now. I can't bleed. Not anymore. He raised his gaze to look at him. Bleak red eyes blinked back at him, dark and slitted. He stared into the abyss, and the abyss stared back. There was still a man in there, but he'd been hollowed out by his great task, the purpose to which he'd set himself so long ago. He was more than death. He was the balance. And something had angered him. Ozma tried to move, only to find his legs rooted to the floor. What's wrong? The hooded man tooted. Lives flashing before your eyes? Of course they were. They always did whenever death came for him, without fail. Some of those lives had been good. Others were not. He regretted a great many things, or things he'd failed to do. Errors he'd made. Lives he'd failed to save. After all, he'd made more mistakes than any man, woman, or child. Death flung the cane down at his feet. Pick it up. For an awful moment, Ozma couldn't. His arm wouldn't obey. Pick it up. Ozma forced himself forward through the fear and snatched his treasure weapon up, just in time to parry another death blow. 5 times he warded him off, defending but refusing to attack. The moment he saw an opening he took it, not to strike, but to backpedal. I would ask that you do not kill me this time, Naruto. He flung up an arm, hissing now as a bloody cut opened upon his sleeve. Or do you prefer Nicholas these days? Much to his surprise, his foe actually paused. Naruto will do. Good. Miracle of miracles, he was actually willing to converse for once. Their last meeting hadn't ended on the best of terms and with him nailed to the wall. That had been an admittedly short reincarnation. His own fault for provoking him in the first place. He'd said something he shouldn't have and paid the price for it. But he could not afford to die so frivolously here, not today. I've done so much good in this incarnation. He chose his words carefully, wary of setting the entity before him off. The kingdoms have never been stronger. So you say Ashbin? Or would you prefer Ozma? He threw the words back in his face. Is Ashbin even in there anymore? Ozma opened his mouth to answer. Lie and I take your tongue. He is not. Naruto tilted his head. And when did you consume him? Just last year. Ozma hung his own a little at the memory. He was a good man and a friend. I was not worthy of his trust or his companionship. Another innocent consumed by the curse forced upon him, another life lost in this eternal war. Sometimes he wondered what happened to them all. Did they die and reincarnate as he did? Perhaps they went to an afterlife of their own after his soul consumed theirs? Or did they simply cease to exist? Dwelling on such thoughts often proved painful. His killer clicked their tongue. Better answer this time. Are you going to spare me for once? A shrug. Maybe. Then why continue this song and dance? You know I won't die. Not really. Because, the blonde before him drawled softly, you remind me of someone. His name was Orochimaru. He took lives to extend his own, too. A sickle flicked out, slashing across a leg and driving him down to a knee. As far as I'm concerned, the only difference between you two is that he did it deliberately. You didn't ask for this. But it doesn't change what you do. What you always do. What you're cursed to do. So you are here to kill me after all. Death tugged back his hood. For the first time in 50 years he glimpsed the man beneath. Cold eyes gazed back at him, framed by spiky hair going silver and dimpled by smiling whiskered cheeks. His eyes weren't red. Not anymore. What makes you think I'm here to kill you? Ashbin rubbed his cheek. His wound was still bleeding, but it was closing, albeit slowly. Then what was that? A greeting? A reminder and a test. He frowned at him. Of what? To see if you still value your life and if you kept your skills sharp. Have I? No. The answer stung his pride more than he cared to admit. You've gotten rusty. You were stronger the last 2 times I killed you. That did more than sting, that irked him. I haven't been in combat for some time. And whose fault is that? The blonde wagged a finger his way. Naruto, please. I had hoped we might talk. Nothing to talk about. I know you take a dim view on immortality. Do you? A sickle came up to tickle the underside of his chin. You and Salem have been annoying me for centuries now. Do you remember why? Careful. He must be careful here. Ozma raised his hands to show himself harmless. Because we laugh in the face of death? No, the sickle bit into his chin, leaving another crimson line there. Because you waste your lives and rarely learn. Now you've cost me Hazel. Hazel! Naruto stepped in, face set in a snarl. He could have done so much good for this world. He could have been a hero among heroes, and then Gretchen died. She died hard, but she still died. For you. Now he won't stop trying to kill you unless I kill him. Do you have any idea how annoying that is? Killing one of your own? For what it's worth, you have my condolences. I didn't know her training mission would end that day. Naruto's sickle fell. At least you learn from your mistakes when I kill you. Sometimes. He stared at him for a long moment, considering him. Still keeping senseless secrets from your allies? I remember what I said about lies. He closed his mouth, unwilling to risk a false answer. The silence is your answer. Death tooted at him softly. You'll need to work on that in the future. Leonardo is a traitor, by the by. His heart hitched. What? No! That's impossible. Leo is a good man, a decent man. A cowardly man, Naruto interjected. He's serving Salem these days. How did you think your favorite silver-eyed warrior came under attack so quickly in the straw? She's alive because of me. If I hadn't been there. Another question nagged him. Are you going to kill Leo? A blonde brow rose, quirking at the foolish question. What do you think? Fair enough. He heaved a sigh. I'll put some flowers on his grave when the time comes. At least make it quick. The blonde's expression said he wouldn't. Is Goodwitch in? Ozma released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding and slumped against his desk. If he was asking after Glynda, that meant he might live a little while longer. Hopefully. She'd hardly go out with him if he got blood all over the tower. Still, he couldn't quite resist the urge to needle him. Still hung up on her, are you? We had an agreement. I don't talk about your ex-wife, you don't talk about my love life. Fair. Given the amount of your descendants running around, I expect we'll have rather interesting class at Beacon in 10 years' time. Perhaps. Naruto clicked his tongue. Now stop distracting me. Where is she? Ozma stood a little straighter under that baleful gaze. Can't you sense her? I'd prefer you save me the trouble of tracking her down. The elevator doors dinged behind him. Ajpin? Someone triggered the silent alarm and oh dear. Aha! Naruto pivoted in place, crooning softly. Speak of the witch, and she shall appear. Glynda made a gagging noise. Why are you here? Away went the sickles, folding in on themselves to vanish within his cloak. He ran a hand through his hair, banishing the blood there, plastering a charming smile across his whiskered cheeks. It was almost frightening how quickly he went from a cold killer to a grinning ladies' man. Ozma could never hope to understand, and frankly, he didn't want to. If he was a god like the brothers, he was a many-faced one, each facade capable of dealing destined death to whomever irked him and his. Would you do me the honor of joining for dinner tonight, Miss Goodwitch? She planted one fist on her hip. You're persistent. I'll give you that. Naruto beamed her way. That didn't sound like a no. That depends. Her bespectacled gaze slid to Ozma. Will you kill him if I refuse? Death shrugged one shoulder. We both know it won't stick yet. True, but it would be an annoyance. I'd rather not deal with the paperwork, or run the academy in his stead. Ozma snorted. Thanks ever so much for your loyalty, Glynda. With all due respect, sir, shut up. I'm not in the mood. Naruto chuckled, but didn't approach. He knew better. So is that a yes? She tooted softly. You'll get one's chance. I'll send you my address. Pick me up tomorrow at 7. Don't be late. Her piece said. His second-in-command strutted back to the elevator, hips swaying. It opened for her, and closed just as quickly. In a matter of moments she was gone. Ozma shook his head. I can't believe you actually succeeded this time. When he looked back, Naruto was nowhere to be seen. He shivered a little. How does he do that? Ozma laid a trembling hand on his desk and stifled a sigh into his mug. The hot cocoa was still cold, but the act of drinking masked his nerves. Death could be such an inconvenience at times, but Naruto was right. It hadn't stuck yet. Sooner or later it would. Each time Naruto killed him, he stayed dead a little longer. He was learning. It was only a matter of time, now. There had been a time when he reincarnated instantly upon his death. Smooth. Seamless. That felt like an eternity ago. Now it took at a full 5 minutes. 300 seconds spent in the void, each one a bitter reminder of the end he'd suffered. Each death only made it worse, and that gap would only grow larger. One of these days he would die for real. And that whistle would be the last thing he heard. He wondered if he would welcome that day when it came around for his last life. Welcome home, Hazel. Salem knew something was wrong at once, if only because Hazel flinched when she said the words. Nevertheless, the silent giant bent his knee before her. I come bearing a gift, my queen. Salem tilted her head. A gift? There was a box tucked under his right arm. He offered it to her now. It was given to me for you. She accepted it with a frown. By whom? I would rather not say. Her smile soured. Leave me. Hazel obeyed all too readily. That was her first warning. Salem eyed her gift intently, considering it as one might a ticking time bomb. Immortal though she was, she couldn't deny a silent pang of curiosity. Hazel wouldn't dare betray her. He knew full well that she could not be slain. Any treachery on his part would be pointless. No matter. She was immortal. Whatever trap lay within, she would survive. Salem opened the box. Tyrion's severed head stared back at her. Calm. She must be calm. Wait. There was a note taped to his cheek. She unfurled it and read its contents. 3 words awaited her within. You were warned. Her eyes flashed. No, she hissed. No, no, and oh. Salem shrieked in fury and flung Tyrion's head against the nearest wall. He was a gentleman. The realization startled Glynda, if only because she'd expected more from him after all this time. In truth, Naruto cleaned up rather nicely when he wasn't butchering his enemies. More than that, he'd been on his best behavior. There were untoward actions on his part, no overt gestures or suggestions of sex, quite the opposite, really. He was the very picture of decorum. He treated her to a simple meal, talked with her for a time, then walked her home after dinner. She expected some sort of move then, a play on her perhaps, but none came. He was just old-fashioned. She couldn't tell if she liked that or not. It was maddening. Well, here we are. Once they stood just outside their door, Naruto took her hand in his, raised it to his lips and kissed the back of her knuckles. Until next time. Baffling. Utterly baffling. He didn't make a lick of sense. His piece said. The immortal let her go and stepped back. Glynda found herself calling out after him. Where are you headed next? Mistral, then Atlas. His smirk was smug, that of a hunter who had found fresh prey. I have a few debts to collect, and old friends to visit. She quirked a brow at him. Going to see one of your grandchildren? One, yes. Glynda counted herself lucky she wasn't one of them. It would have felt far too strange. Even now she still found herself struggling with the concept of dating someone who may well be hundreds of years old. If they shared blood, no, just no. She had her limits, lines she wouldn't cross. This was one of them. Thankfully she needn't worry about that. When will you return to Vale? She cursed herself for asking, but it was too late, the words were in the wind. In a few days. His eyes twinkled. Might I have the pleasure of your company when I return? Heat crawled up the back of her neck. What did you have in mind? Perhaps a walk in the park? Said he reached her face now, turning her cheeks a rosy pink. Ah. She understood now his game now. Naruto was in no rush. None at all. This would be a slow burn. How refreshing. He wasn't going to make a move until she did. She couldn't remember the last time she dated someone like that. Who would crack first? Him? Or her? For once, Glynda didn't know, and the uncertainty excited her. I'd like that. His eyes flashed. Then he vanished in a streak of gold. Glynda sighed and leaned against her door. An enigma. He was a complete and utter enigma. Still, she'd given him one chance already, hadn't she? Perhaps she might see her way to giving him a second and a third. Death was coming. Here. For him. On this night. Lionheart knew it in his bones. He knew it, dreaded it, feared it in equal measure, just as he'd known he always would. Knowing did not help him prepare. Knowing only made things worse. So much worse. Ignorance was bliss. Ignorance was always bliss. There were monsters in the dark, and he found himself ruing the day he ever learned of them. Even now the shadows seemed to stretch out for him, trying to trip him up with their questing fingers. Leo kept his head down and kept walking. He'd packed his things, wiped his records, and chartered himself a private bullhead to the distant wastes of Vacuo. No one went to Vacuo these days. He'd live a new life, under a new name. No more Salem, no more Ashbin. Just had to make it to the airport. He was close now. So very close. Why was he on the ground? Had he tripped? He blinked, baffled, and looked down. His right hand came away red. A sickle jutted out of his stomach, having pierced the small of his back. And he heard the whistle. Dread dawned. No. Someone spun him around. A low grove filled the air. He glimpsed red eyes in the gloom. Moonlight danced off bloody steel. There were no clever words. No puns. Nothing. Simply his end. Lionheart flung up an arm to ward him off. Silent steel sheared it off at the elbow. He screamed. No, wait. Please. Death waited for no one. Bloodstains spattered the alley. You're leaving the tribe? Raven shoved the last of her belongings into a duffel bag, checked Omen at her hip, and grunted once. Boss, you can't. Red eyes rolled as she ignored the man pleading with her and stalked out her tent. More endless bleeding. It hadn't changed an hour ago, and it wouldn't change now. She had to leave the tribe. She didn't want to, but she must. Word had reached her of Leonardo Lionheart's grisly death 3 days ago. Sudden being the operative word. Someone had put his head on a spike outside the gates of Haven and written a warning in his blood. If she stayed here, she would die. He was back. You know why? A nasty little voice hissed in her head. You broke your promise. He will come for you. Kill you. She fought down a shiver. Yes, he would. That one kept his word. Ever and always. So she had to run. Far, far, far away from here before it was too late. Best to leave now at dusk. He couldn't track her in the dark, surely. Even he wasn't that skilled. Veil wouldn't do, Ashbin was there, and she'd never be safe here in Mistral. Atlas, maybe? Vacuo? No, screw Vacuo. Nobody liked Vacuo. Vacuo was the pits. Menagerie, maybe? She'd run there if it meant getting away from her father-in-law. Caught between her two great fears, an immortal grim monster that couldn't die, and a death-dealing destroyer. What could she do but run? She'd have to cut her hair, maybe even change her name, but she could figure that out on the way. For now she must flee. A tiny hand grabbed at her wrist. You can't leave us. What will we do without you? Raven scoffed. Live normal lives? Die. I don't care. But I'm your apprentice. Raven looked down at the little girl grasping her arm. Something stirred in her cowardly heart. Vernal was the same age as Yang. There would be no place for her in the tribe. She knew full what happened to helpless little girls with no one to protect them. Then, as your master, let me do you one last favor. Say hello to Taeyang for me. What? She cut a portal through the air with her blade, grabbed the small child by the scruff of her neck, and tossed her through. Then she closed it behind her. There. She'd done her good deed for the year. Vernal would live, if nothing else. Hey! One of her tribesmen bridled. What about the rest of us? She shrugged and walked away. Too bad, so sad, don't care. A harsh click echoed behind her. Sloppy, she chided herself as she felt cold steel pressed against the back of her head. In her prime, in her right state of mind, she never would have let one of these bastards get the drop on her. Not that it mattered. She had ore and she most assuredly didn't have the time to deal with a few surly jagoffs who didn't know when to run for the hills. She heard the safety being thumbed off. You think you can just walk away from us, boss? Her eyes blazed with crimson flame. Yes, I do. Frost fled from her fingertips in a singular surge to render the stupid bastard a human ice sculpture, pistol and all. Will. She flipped them off over her shoulder and made for the gate. You're on your own. So that's it? Someone shouted at her back. You're just going to run? Another took up the clow. Without us, you will always live a life of. A figure stepped out the shadows ahead of her. Fear. Raven stumbled backward. There was no whistle. No warning. He simply appeared. Even after all these years, you're still afraid, Raven. Some things never change. Her blood ran cold. He was every bit as terrible and terrifying as she remembered and utterly unchanged. He hadn't aged a day since she'd saw him last. Somehow that made it worse. He loped toward her with lazy grace, wearing that small smile of his, sickles in hand. No. Not him. Not here. She couldn't speak at first. She didn't dare. She could only walk backward away from him. Sorry to crash the party with your tribe, or should I say your corpses. He casually slit the throat of a nearby bandit as he walked past. You know why I'm here, Raven. One of her men rushed him and lost their head for it as he swiped backwards. I warned you what would happen if you broke my son's heart. His words turned her cold blood to purest ice. You didn't listen. Now I've come for you. But I'm still alive. Are you? He tilted his head and for a wild moment she imagined a wild wolf staring down a flightless bird. You had a good life. Another bandit fell over as he gutted them. You didn't value it. You're not going to change. So in lieu of a long-winded speech, why don't I do us both a favor and kill you now? That's not fair? A sickle flashed before her face, hooking itself painfully in her left nostril. And what would you know of fairness, I'm stronger now. I've become a maiden. And you're weak as ever. You were gone. I has some business to attend to. But you lot, he looked past her. Your tribe isn't even worth dirtying my blades. His eyes pulsed. The wind keened. Dozens of men and women pitched over, dead. Naruto clicked his tongue. Run, run, little bird. Raven did. She flung herself through the trees. Her mind went mad. She saw him in the branches. Looming behind the trees. Semblance. She had to use her semblance. Taeyang would be furious with her, but anything was better than. A hand burst out of the dark and seized her by the hair, hauling her back. I've enjoyed the chase, Birdie. He pulled back his hood, freeing his hair. But I think we've reached the end now, you and I. He swung down at her throat. Wait. Mercy. The sickle paused. I'm afraid. She warded one hand before her face to fend him off. I've always been afraid. Of you, of Oz, of Salem, of getting attached, of everything. I'm sorry. Steel descended. There was no pain. Raven creaked an eye open. Naruto loomed over her. Well done. She gulped. You said you were going to kill me. And I did. He granted her a death's head smile. I killed the old you. Who are you now? Well, that remains to be seen. But why? I believe in second chances. In a flash, the sickle hooked around her throat. There will not be a third. Make something better of your life than this or we'll meet again. He vanished into so much mist. Raven collapsed with a sob. I will, I promise. Jock drank. Then he drank some more. He kept drinking. And drinking. A wise man once said salvation could be found at the bottom of a bottle. If it was there, he had yet to find it. And so he kept drinking. One of the benefits of being obscenely wealthy, he had his own bar in the manor, outfitted with all manner of wine, whiskey, even vodka when he was feeling courageous. But he did not feel brave today. If anything, he was quite tired. Even the finest drink couldn't wash away the migraine beating at his brain. He'd had an awful day. Blasted white fang. Filthy animals. Why couldn't they let an honest man make an honest wage? Another round, Klein. He thumped the now empty green glass bottle on the counter. Give me the strongest vintage you have. As you wish, sir. The man in question bowed. I keep the strong wine in the back. But rather than retrieve it, the butler dithered. Sir, if I may speak frankly. You already are. He took the plunge. Perhaps you should consider retiring. Jock nearly brained him with the bottle outright. It was only his atrocious aim that caused him to miss. It shattered against the wall, spraying glass everywhere. Klein didn't bat an eyelash. He was butler to Little Weiss first and foremost. Such outbursts seldom fazed him these days. All this drinking is adverse to your health, to say nothing of your hair. Jock scowled at him. Get me that bottle and shut your damn mouth. He hiccuped once. One more word of you and I'll have you sacked. Do you hear me? Sacked? Klein did just that. Jock all but tore the bottle from his grasp. Ah, an Elysian vintage. He uncorked it with a flick of his thumb. Me? He scoffed at his surly, flushed reflection within the blue glass. Retire? Sure, profits were down, his family wouldn't listen to him, and shareholders were unhappy, but things would bounce back. They always did. I'll never retire. He hissed down into the counter. The SDC is mine. Mine! I bled for this. I suffered for this. I earned this. No one will take it from me. A low whistle sang through the air. Every hair on his body, his mustache included, bristled. He'd heard that whistle once before at his wedding. Hadn't he? He turned, startled to find that he was no longer alone. A hooded figure sat beside them, their face hidden by a heavy black cowl, still whistling. The melody tickled the back of his brain. Why did it fill him with dread? He couldn't remember. He thought he might, but his mind was far too fogged by DRNK. Why? What had he forgotten? Without warning, the whistling stopped. Well, well, Jock glimpsed the ghost of a smile within the shadows of that hood. If isn't Jock Gelly himself. Jock knocked the bottle back and drank deeply. It's me now. How did you get in here? The stranger hummed. Even after all these years, you haven't changed. Much to his confusion, those words warped into a low chortle. You just dyed your hair. There's the same mustache, the same attitude, and of course, the same suit. He clicked his tongue in mild admonishment. My compliments to your tailor. He wasn't nearly sober enough for this. Do I know you? This is private property. I could have you thrown out of here in an instant. You could try. I wouldn't recommend that. The stranger flipped the hood back. And he saw. It wouldn't end well for you. No. Not here. Not now. Hello, Jacques. Nicolas Schnee smiled back at him, blonde hair threaded through with silver, almost white as his teeth. Klein, you can stay. The rest of you? A lean card flashed between his fingers. Out. Take the night off on me. You'll be paid triple for the rest of the week. Footsteps scampered as every servant fled for their lives. In his drunken stupor, Jacques didn't have the heart to try and stop them. They were wise to flee, because they remembered the lord of this manor well as did he. Nicolas Schnee, or Naruto as he sometimes called himself, had a certain reputation for inspiring both love and fear in those close to him. Jacques felt the latter now. Nicolas had once said they loved the smell of fear. That it was intoxicating. Feeling it was worse. He couldn't blink. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. A bead of sweat birthed itself upon his brow, ran down his cheek, and dripped down his chin. It turned to ice by the time it struck the ground. Cold. Why was the air so cold around him? He shouldn't be surprised. This man could move faster than the naked eye, cross continents with ease, and so much more. He'd once seen him shatter an iceberg with one punch. By that mark, a bit of cryokinesis seemed downright mundane. A finger tapped down on the counter. So, he took a long drink. How have you been? Stilling his hammering heart, he faced himself to speak. I have been well, father. Well, his father-in-law, but still. Have you now? The glass came down, the drink within barely touched. That's not what I heard. Meep. I gave you and Willow the SDC because I had neither the time nor the patience for it anymore. Because I thought you could help my daughter run it well. Red eyes watched the whiskey swirling in the glass, a lone ice cube rapidly thawing within. And you did. For a time. Jock squeaked. Profits have never been higher. We both know I don't care about profits. A finger traced the lacquered wood counter. I care about my family. You've behaved yourself with Willow. His eyes never left the tiny square of ice, watching intently as it began to shrink. Which is good. I told you what would happen if you laid a hand on here or your children. But you haven't been a proper husband or father either. Naruto continued to tap the counter with one finger. Tap. Are you still behaving, Jacques? Tap. Tap. Yes, of course I am. Tap. 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 He stood. Now what did I tell you about lying? I'm not lying. I did what you said. I made things better. Then why are the White Fang attacking your shipments? His voice carried a dangerous rumble. And why haven't I seen Willow or any of my grandchildren since I arrived here? Do I need to take another finger? It's not my fault they're like this. The words burst from him in a wail. Willow won't listen to me. Winter did as she wished. She left for the military soon as she could. Weiss wants to become a huntress. Whitley wants to be just like you. And did it ever occur to you to ask why? Sir, please, he gulped. I tried to take charge. A hand squeezed his shoulder painfully. Do you feel in charge? Grandfather? A small voice cooed from the doorway. Is that really you? Aha! Nicholas Naruto pivoted atop his seat, all smiles. There's my little snowflake. Gimme a hug. Weiss giggled and launched herself at him. Naruto released him to catch her and swing her round. Jock had never appreciated his daughter more than in this moment, because in holding her, the Schnee patriarch let go of him, which in turn gave him time to scurry away to safety. "Where's your brother and mother?" "Practicing," she chirped up at him as he tousled her hair. "I can use my semblance now." "Is that so?" Her head bobbed, setting her little ponytail swaying. "I summoned a knight yesterday." "I see." Naruto's gaze snapped to Jacques. The latter fought down a flinch. It wasn't his fault. She wanted to fight in Armagigas. Oh yes. He knew precisely what the women of the family were practicing deep within the Shinee manor. Foul techniques. Summoning. Magic. Chakra. The seed was strong. As were the Shinees. He was not. He'd only married into the family after all. He was only a man, one with aura to be sure, but aura meant nothing to them. Fire and damnation. Had he truly known just what bloodline he was marrying into, he would have run far away. It was too late for that now. He made a deal with the devil, with death himself. There could be no escape now. Even if he perished, he would still serve. Lovely. Naruto scooped Weiss up into his arms and let her climb onto his back. "Why don't we pay them a visit? Oh, but first. Jock." The former Gelly whimpered. "Yes?" "Earlier today, I told a little bird that I believe in second chances." A cold blue eye gleamed over his shoulder as he walked away. "You know what will happen if we meet again." Jock slid down to the ground. Klein handed him a bottle, leaving him to stew in his misery. Jock popped the cork and drank. All the whiskey in the world wasn't enough for this. Mediation was key. Willow found peace in it these days. It brought her some small semblance of comfort between her daily duties. As a mother of 3 children, it did much to keep her sane. It was a time when she could simply close her eyes, shut down, and let her mind wander in the dark. She sat down, folded her legs beneath her, and exhaled softly. Let the world in her room fall away. Power. Poise. Perfection. Such was what it meant to be a Shinee, inheritors of a bloodline dating back to a time when the people of Remnant were not 4 kingdoms, but endless warring peoples. Willow took pride in that. And why shouldn't she? Her father was death. And she didn't mean it metaphorically or rhetorically or poetically or theoretically or in any other fancy way. He was death. Straight up. And she was his daughter. She had a right to be bloody proud, damn it. For you see, Willow wasn't a huntress or even a shinobi, unlike some of his descendants. No, she was more than that. Every Shinee was. Just as their semblance allowed them to pull life from death and summon those they'd slain to aid them in battle, so too were they more than most. They were reapers. Death was their duty, life their namesake, and no one knew. Truly it was a thankless duty, a terrible task, but someone had to keep the balance. Perhaps once upon a time, long ago, Father might have been human. Before he took up his great task and became something more. Willow didn't know the when or why and certainly not the how, but frankly she didn't care. She had no memories of her mother which suggested unpleasantness or an end she dearly didn't want to contemplate, and Father, Daddy, had raised her into the woman she now was. She owed her life to him as much as it last did. If not for him, the kingdom would still be a struggling outpost in the north. He'd found dust, founded the SDC, even run it for a time, until Jacques married into the family. The thought of him lent her smile a wicked edge. Ah, yes. Jacques Gelly, that wretched little worm, he who once wished to wrest control of the SDC for himself, utterly unaware of what she truly was. More fool he. That Jacques had been dead for quite some time now. Only a broken shell remained. He'd been blinded by her beauty and the lean, the promise of power and all the prestige that came with taking over the company. Perhaps had he known Father was death incarnate, the living representation of the great hereafter, he would have run screaming for the hills. But he hadn't and he didn't, and so they'd allowed him to live in ignorance. The deception had been useful, amusing even, in some of her more morbid moments. By the time Gilly realized the truth that his supposedly weak wife was terror incarnate, it was too late. He was locked in, trapped, with no escape. No one would see the truth. No one. And so he took to drinking, the poor fool. Really, it just wasn't any fun tormenting him anymore. She had contemplated killing him once or twice, putting the little man out of his misery, but ultimately decided against it. He was of more use to her alive than dead. His resources were useful, his contacts necessary, and his network well. She'd subverted that long ago. Besides, she needed him relatively intact if she wanted to keep having children. Now there was a pleasant thought. Little Whitley might like having a baby brother or two. Perhaps 3? The Schnee bloodline must continue at all costs. All this at the expense of poor Jacques. She almost pitied him. Almost. Willow knew her family wasn't the only one to bear the blood, of course. While the Schnees were blessed with their inherited semblance, others manifested unique abilities. Some could see mystic lines of death, the precise point where to cut something damn near anything, and kill it stone dead. Others were more mundane in their talents. She'd heard tell of a curious clan of blonde sword masters, stalwart champions who could face down entire armies of Grimm with sword and shield alone, titans to make even Elder Grimm quail. And then there were other, stranger tales in the Badlands of Remnant, a place where the line between fact and fiction all too easily blurred. Why, just the other day her dear spymaster had spun her a most curious yarn, the story of a wanted fugitive, a girl who massacred her mother and father with nothing but her voice. Apparently this girl could kill with a word, and so had sworn a vow of silence since. No one knew where she was now. A pity. She would have liked to recruit her. Doubtless were others like her, scattered across the wastes, more than father could ever hope to find. There were those who kept the balance, who worked in the shadows, preventing the Grimm from overwhelming humanity, but also humanity from overtaking the whole of Remnant. Just as there could be no death without life, so too could be no life without death. And the world didn't know. Remnant spun on in its ignorance, blissfully unaware of the titans that walked in their midst. They assumed it to be the work of semblances or magic, myth even. They knew nothing. Perhaps that was for the best. Father preferred it that way. She knew he was a bit of an odd duck goose, in certain circles. But none of that mattered to her. Father was father. He had been the one constant in her life since she was small, her first memory, and one day her last. Miss Schnee? A voice plucked her from her musing. Alexis. Her maid possessed impeccable timing, as always. A letter arrived for you just this morning. Another one already? She kept her eyes closed but did noting to hide her smile. How lovely. Did a dusty old bird happen to deliver it? Why, yes. The young woman sounded confused. How did you know? I have my ways. Willow tooted softly. Crow was reliable as ever, it seemed. She ought to buy him a drink sometime. I trust you left it on my desk with the other correspondence? I did, ma'am. Her smile grew another inch. Good girl. She'd have to reward her latter in private. The thought of it almost had her licking her lips, and at once her mind began to wander. No, don't think about Alexis' full lips and that long red hair right now. Focus! Dalliances asides, she rather enjoyed her dialogue with her half-brother Taeyong these days. Communicating via letter was far more entertaining than a scroll call. She disdained such technology. It had no place in her life. Come to think of it, he had 2 children of his own now, didn't he? Such darling girls. Perhaps she should visit them? They were not true Schnee, not in the proper sense of the word, but they shared her blood, which made them her nieces nonetheless. The longer she entertained the idea, the more appealing it became. Weiss might enjoy a vacation from Atlas, to say nothing of Whitley. Winter wouldn't want to leave the academy, but she'd fold with a bit of prodding. She always did. And it would be nice to see summer again. Ma'am, there's something else. She heard the woman fidget. You also have a visitor. Did she now? Watts must have come to bargain again. How could one so smart be so very foolish? I shall see to them in an hour. They were most insistent. Everyone always was. They always wanted her time. Always, always, always. I'm sure they were. Willow bit back. But they will wait. That will be all, Alexis. Oh, of course, my lady. Willow listened as her maid walked away. Counted to 10. Only then did she finally deign to open her eyes and rise from her crouch, ending her meditation. Well, she supposed it was time for her morning exercises. Enough time had been wasted with that argument already. She stood and regarded a towering suit of armor across the room, set before her in the wall. To the untrained eye it was just that. A suite of armor, however large. An iron giant clad in fully heavy plate, tall enough to cast her in its shadow and heavy enough to crush her with a single blow should it ever fall upon her. Activate. At her command the armored suit lurched to life, drew its sword and snapped off a salute. The ghost of a smile touched her face as she regarded its posture. This particular Armagigas wasn't truly alive in the traditional sense, not at all like the creature she'd slain in her youth. This one was all wires and circuits, bits and boards. Better yet, it was easily replaced, which made it the perfect training mechanism. Pietro had done his work well. Willow considered it for a moment. Commence training protocol 9. A bit of light exercise was just the thing to burn off some stress. It nodded once and lumbered forward. Willow brought her hands up and pressed her palms together, finger to finger, then closed her eyes. Closer it came. She didn't move. Its arm rose, braving its blade in both hands. Mirror, mirror, Willow hummed a soft lullaby to herself and mustered her might. On the wall, show me who's the strongest of all. The Armagigas struck down. Her eyes snapped open, blazing blue. An arm struck the floor with a heavy thud, fingers still twitching. It wasn't her own. The poor Armagigas stumbled back, leaning to the left, unbalanced by the sudden loss of its limb. Willow smiled at it, and twirled a massive scythe of gleaming ice in both hands, letting it whirl over her head before she brought it back down at her side. She'd no need for makeshift weapons of worthless steel. Weapons broke. Steel rusted. But a weapon forged from her very soul? That lasted forever. Ice was her weapon, and with it came the cold touch of death. Well? She tilted her head. I told you to attack. Attack me! At her command the knight reached down, retrieved its arm, and attached it once more. Within moments the limb was moving again. Fascinating. An improvement. The last unit hadn't been able to do that. Was this one being remotely controlled by that project of his? It certainly fought better. Perhaps a certain scientist was due a raise? A white glyph burst beneath her feet, and she was away, skating forward on a sea of ice. Her scythe flicked out in a lazy overhand swipe. The knight managed to block with the hilt of its blade, but only because she allowed such. Truly it was no fun when they died too quickly. Robots weren't the same as a flesh and blood opponent. She felt no fear from them, no terror, nor shock. So dreadfully boring. Its blade swept in again, and she swayed under it, grinning ear to ear as she skated away to safety. She didn't see the boot until it barreled into her back. Pain lanced down Willow's spine, and with it, the tenuous illusion of self-control. Better! She pivoted to commend her false foe, wearing a borderline feral grin. Release restrictions 6 through 9. Green light gleamed within that soulless helm. Willow lowered her stance, sweeping her scythe overhead. Any moment now there. The Armagigas didn't so much lunge at her as it did leap, bringing its blade down on her head in a rousing overhand smash. Nope. Not blocking that. Willow swept her sickle up and parried, diverting the blade harmlessly away to the right in a shower of sparks. It shattered the floor where it struck, creating a sizable crater behind before pivoting to slam the full weight of its blade against her scythe. For the first time since their battle had begun, Willow's face lost its smile. Fast. Very fast. Faster than it had any right to be. Strong, too. She felt her knees begin to buckle beneath such strength. Anyone else would have faltered. Not her. Not a Schnee. Never a Schnee. Rather than cling to her weapon like some foolish huntress, Willow let go of her scythe and let it shatter. Allowed the Giga's blade to sweep over her head, now. Her eyes narrowed. Gotcha. Her hands came together again, conjuring a long lance of ice between her palms. She whirled and thrust it deep through the robot's armpit. Circuits sparked within the armor. Froze now as hoarfrost crept across its outer shell. She let that weapon go too, leaving it in place to step back. Willow snapped her fingers and a pale blue glyph burst before her. A massive clawed fist burst through to strike the armor Giga's dead center in the chest. Armor warped as it stumbled back, stunned for an instant. That was all the time it took for her to summon another scythe. Willow cancelled the half-summon, no need to fully summon that thing here, and waded in, scythe singing in her hands. Father had taught her well and she put those lessons to good use. Parry again. Riposte. Hook the blade around the knight's knee and yank. The armor Gigas went down with a startled grunt, hamstrung in a way most machines couldn't be. When it tried to brace itself with one hand, she cut it clean off at the wrist, and kicked the offending limb away and slicked the other clean off when it sought to stab her. The armor Gigas limped back on its good leg, garbling gibberish. It raised what was left of its arms in what might have been surrender. Well, well. Would you look at that? Machines could feel fear after all. Fascinating. She watched the green light fade from the knight's eyes, leaving it to slump. A pity. It seemed Pietro's project didn't want to play anymore. Rather than retort, she drew in a deep breath and exhaled, expelling a cloud of cold steam with a single breath. The armor Gigas froze on the spot and its pleased with, encased in ice. A single sweep of her scythe shattered it completely, rendering it motes of falling snow. Her wrist beeped, and she raised her watch to regard the watch there. She'd beaten her last time by a second. Only a second? She was getting sloppy. Someone clapped behind her. Willow heard the whistle next. Her heart skipped a beat, and not for the reasons one might think. What might have been a source of fear and terror to others was one of gentle reassurance for her. A gentle lullaby, a soft song that lulled her to sleep when she was a child, a soft lilting sound. There was more to it than that. It was both a reassurance and a reminder, a promise of protection not only for her and her children, but their children and their children's children and all future Shnees to come. She turned to face, and sure enough there he was. Father was home. He looked much the same as he always did, if a little more tired, his posture hiding the slightest sign of a slouch for good reason. He had Whitley on his back and Weiss clinging to his leg, each of whom were grinning ear to ear like the children were. The latter beamed up at her. Grandpa's home. Willow banished her weapon and smiled softly. I noticed, Weiss. Well, Nicola's Naruto, Schnee grinned, offering his free hand. Don't just stand there. Give your old man a hug. Willow very nearly did. Her first instinct was to leap into his arms as she often did when she was young, but she had an image to maintain even before her children. She walked into his embrace instead. Welcome home. Will you be staying long? For a few days. He kissed her forehead. I saw the fight. How about a spar? I'm curious to see how far you've come. Her eyes lit up and her blood sang. A proper fight? After that disappointment? That sounds like a lovely idea. Weiss watched mother and grandfather take their positions with bated breath. Child though she was, she found herself admittedly somewhat torn toward the outcome. On one hand, she wanted Mother to win, but on the other, she was quite curious to see Grandfather could do. She'd never seen him fight before. Supposedly Winter had, but Weiss had been too young at the time to remember. Besides, thinking of her big sister made her sad. She wished Winter were here to see this. Here in the manor. With them. Why had she left? Was it something she had said? Something she did wrong? She must have done something. Why else would she refuse to see them, even during the holidays? Fight, fight, fight. Weiss sighed and shook off such thoughts, looking to Whitley, idly wishing she could share in his excitement. Her baby brother was practically vibrating in place, all but hopping from foot to foot with excitement. He young and didn't really understand why Winter had left, why she wasn't coming, but one day he would. What could she say to him? In the end, she pushed the matter back for another day. She knelt and wrapped both arms around her younger brother to hush the little scamp. They'll start in a second. Just be patient. Do I have to? Whitley Schnee! Grandfather's voice cracked like a whip. Listen to your sister. The boy wilted in her arms. Yes, Grandpa. Willow hummed her approval. Good boy. Shall we begin then? Grandfather sketched a courtly bow her way. Whenever you wish. Mother smirked. I've come up with a few new tricks since we last fought. Weiss nearly choked on her spit. They'd done this before? Grandpa grinned. Let's see them. A gravity glyph burst beneath his feet, dragging him down on one knee. He tooted softly and tumbled out of it, only to find a sheen of ice creeping up his leg. A blond brow rose and he leaped back to tear it free. Mother met him in midair, and the world dissolved into a storm of ice and steel. It was incredible, so fast Weiss could barely keep track of them. They did not duel, they danced, and it was beautiful. Haunting. Utterly terrifying. She'd seen Mother train before. Mother was always incredible. Agile. Poetry in motion. No one could possibly touch her. Grandfather was just as fast. No, he made Mother look slow. Her scythe flicked in at his face only to be swatted aside, then he was in her face, raining down sweeping strikes with his twin sickles. Mother managed to evade the first two, took a third on the shoulder, bewled forward, took a hand from her weapon and... Yah! Grandpa's head snapped back as she drove a heel palm under his chin. Weiss heard his teeth click together from here. He must have bit his tongue. Even little Whitley winced. But rather than get angry, Grandpa only laughed, wiped a line of blood from the corner of his mouth, and took up his stance once more. Good, he allowed. Very good. Then he was on her, sickles singing a song of steel. Now it was Mother gave ground, panicking and parrying in a way she'd never seen before. When she tried to use a glyph to speed away, he flung a scythe up, hooked it in like a fish, and smashed it across her head, stunning her. Still she fought on. It did her little good. No matter what icy weapon Mother conjured, Grandpa was ready for each and every one. Sword, scythe, lance, even a giant warhammer at one point. All for naught. He dismantled her every tactic with ease. For every sweep she managed to block, another got through, and each one that did sapped her aura bit by brutal bit. She landed a few slashes of her own with her ice weapons, but Grandpa shrugged each off until, quite suddenly, he had her. A sickle swept up under Mother's chin, and it was done. Yield! She gasped out, hands raised. I yield! What have I told you? He lowered his weapon and flicked her forehead. You're a jack of all trades, master of none. Branching out is all well and good, but it can only carry you so far. Remember that. If you're going to do anything worth doing, do it all the way, you know. Yes, sir. Great. Much to Weiss's delight, Grandfather clapped his hands. Now then, who wants ice cream? Whitley's hand slammed up. I do. All right then. Help your mother clean up and get your jackets. It's cold out. Whitley rushed Mother, babbling happily. Weiss did not. She looked to Grandpa, quietly curious. How did you become so strong, Grandfather? Moreover, how did she? Bit of an accident, Weiss. He patted her head and followed after them. Refusing to be left behind, she grabbed his hand and forced him to slow down for her. He did so, albeit with a soft sigh. My joy in life always came from protecting and serving others. I never really wanted to become well death. She tilted her head. So how did you? Bit of a long story, that, and one that involves a tree. Listen, Weiss. He looked down as they walked, his gaze seeking hers. A day may come when you feel you're not strong enough. A day when you feel small. A day when you fail. But that's all right. She wrinkled her nose and blinked up at him, utterly baffled. It is? Mother said shnees are supposed to win. Always. Maybe that was why Winter left. Because she couldn't meet Mother's expectations. Does she now? That drew a bark of laughter from him. What your mother doesn't understand is this: failure makes us stronger. He gave her hand a tiny squeeze. Whether that means following in my footsteps or running this, that's your choice. Until then, this house will be like a castle, protecting you. Eventually, however, you yourself will become a castle that will protect others. And that will make me quite proud indeed. Should I build castle just like you did then? Ha! His laughter sounded more genuine this time. That's right. Inside your heart, build the biggest and most noble castle you can. Build it together with the friends you'll one day meet. You never know. You might meet them sooner than you think. Friends. Weiss liked the sound of that. Yes, she liked it very, very much indeed. She would remember those words years later, when she met a little Red Reaper. He hadn't come. Winter drilled relentlessly, snarling and slashing at her opponent with reckless abandon until they were full of holes, much like her stance. She knew she'd get a telling off for that, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Likewise, the poor bastard before her couldn't even defend themselves properly. Such was her fury. She showed them no mercy. Her blade bit into them time and time again until nothing remained. No arms. No legs. No nothing. Just a trembling torso on the floor at her feet. They quivered spasmodically beneath her gaze, unable to do anything else. A living opponent would have been dead. The poor mech beneath her probably wished it was after the damage she'd inflicted. Could you traumatize a robot? Gods, she hoped not. She'd torn at least 7 apart in the last hour, ripping and tearing with reckless abandon. And still her anger wasn't spent. Because he had not come. Tomorrow was her birthday. He'd promised. Cadet Schnee. Sir? She straightened, drawn from her maudlin thoughts. Her supervisor stared at her for a long moment, noting the mechanized corpses around her, the sweat on her brow, her disheveled state. Her uniform torn, her hair down, lanky and heavy against her damp face. She was a mess. He'd be well within his rights to reprimand her for such sloppy behavior. It wasn't Captain Ironwood, she told herself. She didn't care what anyone but him thought. The lie was hollow, even to her. You have a visitor, he said at last. I do? Her brow furrowed. Is it father again? I am not at liberty to say. He is waiting in your quarters. Her shoulders slumped with a sigh. Understood. It was him then. That or Mother, which would be worse. She'd left to get away from her stifling expectations. When would she realize that? Probably never. She sighed. Best to get it over with. It was a long walk to her quarters. Longer still in her sorry state. Other students made way for her. She could feel their eyes on her back, hear their snide comments, taste the judgment in the air. It all pressed down on her, an invisible weight grinding against her shoulders. The snickers. The laughter. The scowls. Look at her. She's a mess. What did you expect? She's a savage. An utter brute. I hear she even got bumped up a year, the little ice queen. Shoo! Don't let her hear you say that. She'll probably attack you. Recommending her was a mistake. I don't care what Ironwood thinks, the girl's a monster. Winter sniffed and blinked once to hide her tears. They stung at her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Bah! Let the sheep bleat. She was still a Schnee, however fall she might have fallen. Sticks and stones might break her bones, but she refused to let words hurt. Not now. Not ever again. She stalked back to her quarters, cursing softly. Soon enough she reached her room. A tap of her scroll against the lock and the door whooshed open before her. She stepped inside and toggled the lights. No one awaited her within. She scowled. Is this a joke? Not quite. A voice echoed behind her. Meep! Winter yelped and jumped so high her head hit the ceiling. Her skull complained most bitterly as she crashed back to the floor, leaving her to rub her aching head with a whine. Blasted strength. She could usually keep it in check for the most part, but he'd scared the life out of her. Grandfather! She rounded on the perpetrator with equal parts excitement and anger. Must you do that every time? Yes, I must. He granted her a warm smile as he stepped out the shadows. Odd. Why did he have both hands behind his back? I never miss my favorite granddaughter's birthday. How long have you been hiding in here? Only a few minutes, give or take. He tooted softly. Realization dawned as his words caught up with her a moment later. Her face warmed at his praise. You actually remembered? But you're early. I'm old, not senile. Here. He reached behind his back and revealed a long parcel sheathed in an azure box. I got you a gift. She quirked a pale brow. What is it? Open it and see for yourself. Curious. Winter did as she was bade and opened the box, only to find a witch shroud of cloth concealing it. Something was wrapped within. Made eager by the sight, her trembling fingers peeled the cloth back with delicate care, not wanting to damage her gift. Whatever it was, it had some weight to it. Not enough to be heavy, but it possessed a certain heft all the same. Not it, she realized. She peeled back the tarp and found herself gazing upon a pair of weapons. Beautiful black curved, segmented blades, each bearing a wicked notch near the handle for some kind of advanced mecha shift. Winter suspected she knew the type she'd been asking after these all her life. She'd thought it a pipe dream, an idle fancy, one that she would never see realized, like so many other things. Do you like it? Grandfather asked. If not, I could always take them back. At the end of the day, Winter Schnee was still a child, no matter how much she pretended not to be. They're perfect. She couldn't quite conceal the squeal that fled from her lips with the words, nor the babbling that followed as she all but dove into his arms. Thank you? Thank you, thank you, thank you. 1,000 times thank you, I love you. Grandfather choked. You got me good there. Winter's words caught up with her a moment later. She froze. Now she looked up and found Grandfather grinning ear to ear. I mean, that is to say. Don't worry about it. He tousled her hair, drawing a growl from her. You were the top of your class this year. I thought a reward was in order. And I saw you eyeing my weapons the last time I visited. She had been. He spoke the truth. She didn't have Mother's aura reserves, nor the fine-tuned chakra control of Little Weiss. But when it came to breaking things, killing things, she was good at that. Very good. She was strong and fast, and getting better with her glyphs. She could already summon the Grim she'd killed. It was in her blood. The thought pained her, but there it was. Sit, would you kindly? He sat on her cot and patted the space beside him for her to join him. Winter didn't even have to jump this time. Grandfather noticed and laughed. Look at that, you don't even need my help this time. You're getting tall. Did you steal all your sister's height? Winter giggled despite herself. Weiss wouldn't appreciate that joke, but she wasn't here to hear it now, was she? Here, grandfather nudged her weapons into her hands. I'll show you how these work. Give the trigger a squeeze. Gently now. She did as he bade. With a click of their gears, the blades bent and folded down to enfold her fist in a wicked punching implement, much like the way grandfather's sickles could. Now twist the handle like so. The blades cracked apart to reveal a pair of vents within, thankfully lacking ammunition. She'd need to practice with dummy rounds until she truly got the hang of it, but she could already see a future in which she used those hidden guns to devastating effect against her foes. It would prove a nasty and lethal surprise for anyone who tried to close with her in combat. And she lost herself to her excitement once more. What else? Watch, he guided her hands, still holding the blades, pressed the hilts together and… Ah! With a flick of the gears, she found herself holding a bladed staff. Her head spun. So many combinations. Just like his weapons. It'll take practice. I will! She burst out. I'll practice. Here was a weapon tailor-made for her strength, able to adapt to any situation with ease. It would take time, but she had all the time in the world. I'll treasure it. I promise. Good girl. He patted her head. Now what's this I hear about you being bullied? Winter's enthusiasm died an ugly die, as did the smile on her lips. I didn't know what you mean. Winter. She quailed, but said nothing. She had to handle this on her own. Mustn't ask for help. So what if the entire school was against her? She was a Shnee. A Shnee did not ask for help. Fine, have it your way. He sighed at the last. Mind doing me a favor? Her eyes lit up. Anything. Grandfather smiled. How good are you at writing letters? To whom? She knew she had a few cousins scattered throughout Remnant. Was she writing to one of those? She already had one such pen pal in a homely little village known as Ansel. Come to think of it, she'd best write to him again. John could be such a boy sometimes. Ah, but Grandpa had asked a question. Who will I be addressing this letter to? Grandfather's grin grew another inch. To a friend. I'll dictate the letter. Afterwards, you can tell me about these bullies of yours. Winter wavered, warbling a little. I really shouldn't. Naruto tilted his head. You really should. She sang like a canary. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comment section how was the story. And also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Bye bye.